Have you ever wondered how do I become a better Sentinel player overall? Every time I go into site, I die. Every time I go to flank, I die. Every time I ask my teammates what time it is, they kill me. The fuck? 6 Sentinels, 6 maps, and a dream. Watch until the end of the video to learn every single nuance of every single character on every single map, and by the end of the video you will be at least 50% better Sentinel overall. Let's go. Look at me doing so much work for a stupid graph. This is the Sentinel graph. The more you go to this side, the higher the ranks obviously, and the higher it is on this scale, the better it becomes. Because on lower ranks like this, what do enemies do when they want to take your site? All of them just line up like this in a group, monkey together, strong, and then they all go cook from this one circle. And Sentinel's job is to stop just that, because as soon as one guy pushes in, you pop literally everything, you destroy, you melt, because like no, who's gonna push through this? I removed my invulnerability, and these are my own spikes. I take half of my health just pushing through this from my own spikes. Imagine what would it do to the enemy. It's almost like they come from CSGO and they're like, Rush Bibliad. And the reason it drops lower, because once you kind of get better at the game, you realize that you would be able to punish these enemies if you have abilities like a flash. For example, somebody pulls up and you just mess him up and you get that free kill and you can go out. With Sentinel, you cannot really do that. You kind of have to rely on your team a little bit too much. And then finally, to reach the highest level right here on the Radiance, Immortals type stuff, on these ranks, people actually start playing for information and space instead of getting kills. So when you have one character, that's you, that's Killjoy mains, who can lock down the whole map with just one character, that's where it gets really useful. You might be, well, why the hell can you not just play Phoenix and punish people in Radiant with Phoenix? Very rarely are you actually gonna find someone that you can punish in Radiant type shit. You're not just gonna face one guy who's running up to you trying to kill you. In higher ranks, Raze is going to double satchel into you, but she's also gonna get the stun. And so what if you flash him? He's gonna come through, he's gonna be blind, but you can't, you know what I mean? Whereas if you take the lower ranks, it's also harder to punish people with Phoenix, because even if he blinds, he's probably going to be facing 5 of them, right? In lower ranks, in my very humble opinion, it's just better to play Cypher with weird ass, stupid ass trips, and because all of them are gonna just rush into your site together, they're gonna create chaos themselves against the Cypher. They're gonna step into your trap. Alright, now that I have explained to you this bell curve, it looks like a stick, man. Let's move on. Tip number 1, I recommend you splitting your trips. That means that if you do get attacked, you're always gonna be participating in both sides of the map. As a Sentinel, your job is to die last, so I really do not want to see you just peeking angles like this, taking a 1v1, dying, and all of this utility that you took 30 seconds, like you took more time to throw your utility than you survived. Not good. Try to always play in a safe space with all of the Sentinels that you play, where you can get kills safely, and in case they ult you with Breach, Brimstone, Raze, you can always back off. Same works on A side. Try not to play angles where you might get pushed from one side of the enemies and then get caught from behind, but instead play from safe angles where you can fight, and when you hear I am coming for your father from Raze, you just bounce back and just chill. When you're placing trips with Cypher, always make sure that your trip is at your head level. Try to make it shoot into your eyes. That way enemies cannot crouch over it, jump over it. And when you do place them at this level, make sure that you don't place them next to some weird item that they can use to boost themselves over it, because that happens way too often. And the Sentinel's job is to retain the space that your teammates already have, so very often you will see Sentinels just kind of be lurking in the middle area. A good Sentinel will always take advantage of the 4 people right here who are making a bunch of noise, making it seem like it's a Rush Bibliad, when in reality you're also participating in the fight, because as soon as your teammates push through the choke point, you start your lurk here, and with Would you look at that? Now, how to know what is the right timing for you to start your flank? Usually it's after some type of an interaction. If your team throws the smokes or some type of a flash that would directly interact with the enemies, and then the enemies can hear like 3 of you pushing down B main, they're gonna start to call out that it is B, and they're gonna shift their focus towards defending the choke point. And usually that is when you start to lurk through this. Your job is not necessarily to go and kill this guy. It might also be that you push into another angle and you catch the other player rotating with his knife out. If you taken this space and you push through the vision of this guy holding mid, you made a gap in their defense because you were so silent and sneaky. Now they've lost control over this, like they don't know. Someone might be there, someone might not be there. Most of the times enemies are gonna assume that nobody's there, and either they're gonna push into you with knives, and if not, then once you have this opening and your team has not pushed through the choke point yet, they're just kind of wazzling around, you can call them to rotate back. And when you're going to be rotating back, enemies are going to have to either be extra careful, they're either going to have to burn a lot of utility like a Phoenix Flash to clear back the space, which most likely they're not going to do. And that is when you capitalize on the good stuff. You know, that is when you're like, oh, the art is free as well, I don't mind if I do. I want to give you a really good example of this that happened to me yesterday. Having a lure on a map like Split is extremely good, to the point where I was lurking with like Raze. My whole team started to make noise B main, and they got in the interaction, they flashed or whatever, so I knew that I have the timing, push in right here, and once the full team starts to rotate back, I was playing with my friend and I told him, act like you don't know that I'm here. They're all making this noise and the enemies are assuming that all 5 of you are moving together. So this breach, you know, he thinks, oh, they have not pushed through this choke point yet, so we can just take positions like Vents, you know, Heaven, and we can fight them or some shit like that. So my teammates just starts jump spotting, acting like we don't have this space in this cubby right here, which forced the breach to, not forced, he did it on his own. He was not competent enough to understand that, oh no, someone might actually be here. So he pushed up, then I can just peek in and kill him for free. He's gonna be like, what the hell, man? Now, okay, now when you're playing against a Sentinel, and you know that, for example, Chamber always places a strip right here and then goes to hold B side or A art or whatever, fighting a Sentinel is like fighting a big boss, and you have to like throw your darts at him, do chip damage. So breaking his utility one by one is like fighting a boss with 10 different people and just seeing when is he gonna start to bleed. So come up right here, you can listen, you're like, oh, I hear a chamber trap. You can come up right here and you can literally break the trap by spraying like this. A perfect example of this is an alarm bot on Haven on B side. If you're playing against a Killjoy and you don't really know what the plan for your team is, you can see a bunch of guys just playing here, maybe someone here. You're playing default. Default, for my folks who don't know, is when you play on every side of the map and you look for a 1v1, you look for information, maybe you'll find a Sentinel, you're gonna execute on C, or perhaps someone will give you a long range fight down the C lane, which you're gonna take because a 50-50 for an attackers is good when it's equal numbers. Instead of staring at nothing, you can shoot around right here, or you can come around like this and listen to any of the Cypher traps or Killjoy traps, which you can break. This alarm bot right here is so popular to the point where Sova players on VCT, literally on VCT, started to using some lineups to try and break the dart. Now, you don't have to be a VCT player. You can just jump spot one, see nothing, we'll charge that shit and break it, and now you're just as good as a VCT player. But some Sentinels on attack, you actually have a similar role as like a duelist or an initiator. That means that instead of Chet throwing the smoke, you can throw the smoke and act like a duelist for a little bit. Instead of Sova scanning a spot, you can be a scanner and you can throw a dart. Instead of breach, stunning, and aftershocking, these two main common defense spots for the enemies, if your breach is not doing that, you can always run into the side, and because you're smoked anyway, for example, you don't have anything to do. And as your duelist entries, look how much space you've created them. Enemies are gonna start to panic, they're gonna move into spaces like this, and oh, actually, while we are near garage, look at this very nice robot that you can throw. You kind of hide it behind this box and it's gonna look at C long, and these guys don't really hear it and they don't really break it. Look how much space. It's a great robot. It's a great robot. Okay, it's time for Chamber, the golden boy. He, of course, as other sentinels, have a very similar role, which is you hold down the space that your team already has. Your team already has a main, so he's like, boom, 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 right? Now, if your shots cost $100, can somebody explain to me why in the hell do people buy a sheriff in the first round? Like, how does that make any sense? Never buy a sheriff instead of 8 of your shots on this freaking gun. And it is actually even worse if you buy a sheriff on your eco round, because now instead of being able to cook someone up right off the bat in the beginning of the round, eco round, you get a pick for free. You do 145 and look at that, you do 145 and you TP out. And like, I see this shit in Immortal, guys. I see this shit in Immortal. Don't. And another shit I see in Immortal is people who have their ultimates also buy themselves a Vandal. Your Fade over there has a pistol. Just take that and let me cook. That's it. If you have Chamber ult, you play Chamber ult. Someone else gets your gun. Like, it's that simple. Same goes with Jet Knives, by the way, and Neon ult. Now, if you play Deadlock, I recommend you actually not even putting your traps behind. If enemies are gonna flank, they're gonna be shifting anyway, so there's really no point. And if you're executing the site fast and the flanker has to run across it, it's again like you're executing the site fast. And if he's still at the point where your trip is, then he's too late anyway. Instead, when you take the site, you can set up these interesting trips like this, and as soon as you hear one of them pop, you throw some type of utility to block off the other enemies that don't get zapped by your trips. And after you do that, you can just peek out and you will kill them. Right now, here's the situation that you're facing. 5 of your teammates are constantly rushing one of the sides, and you're like a Cypher or some shit. If your teammates are constantly 5-stack rushing one of the sides and they're not playing for info, then don't trip behind. Now, by behind, I don't mean do not trip your back, but by behind I mean don't trip a main. I want you to save that one trip true to the side. Let's say 2 of your teammates died and now it's a 3v3 and they're closing in on you, but you 5 seconds ago have placed a trip right here. You can even put it on the bottom. And once you place trips, sneaky trips, that's when you can't play slower. And as the time ticks, these players are gonna have to make the play, and they're gonna start to maybe neon wall. Maybe they're gonna go for a Phoenix wall. They're gonna drop some Omen smoke. What is Deadlock doing up there? And in all of this chaos, they're gonna drop and get scanned. And then you just spray them for free, you know what I mean? Do you get my point? Like, the more the round goes on, the more chaos they're gonna have to create to push through the choke point. And they're gonna think like, oh, we're taking space, when in reality, they're taking some damage from the trips. 5. Now, if you play Killjoy, of course, putting mollies on the spy is a very good idea because it lets you stall out the enemies quite a while. Right, and remember when I said that it takes 20 seconds for the enemies on your ranks to even realize that the bomb has been planted. Unfortunately, I only want you to do this type of a play if you have full sight, the door is closed, and no one's fighting from one of these angles or whatever. If you don't have sight, I still want you to help your duelist to take space by throwing these types of mollies and helping them take the site first. Coming back to the mistakes of a Sentinel again, this is actually happening more often than it should, even in my ranks. If you didn't have time to set up your freaking setup, then don't go ahead and start placing your trips after the round has started, because that literally reveals your position. It's getting more and more often for some freaking reason that I can hear Cyphers placing their trips after the round has started, and we can literally hear that. It happens on bind very often. Cypher's gonna like jump on top of this thing and try to put his god camera while I'm chilling right here and I can hear that shit. When that happens, I just say, okay, Cypher's playing on A, well, let's rotate, boys. Unfortunately, the boys do not rotate. They decide that they're better and they're still gonna push into Cypher, but that's a different problem. Now, if you want to be a big brain, because Cyphers have been doing this very often, I was like, they're trying to fake me. If you have a camera, that's a different thing. Even though every time a Cypher has placed this camera right here, I always would be like, he would always chill on the side that he is on. But now imagine if Cypher had tripped the other side and not the choke points. He tripped somewhere inside the site like this, so that when the enemies can come up, they cannot hear default trips that would be on hookah or outside of hookah, or a default trip on belong right here. Now, when they do not hear these trips and they're gonna start the round on showers and they're gonna hear the Cypher cam, they might be like, oh, Cypher's playing on A, let's rotate. And now they rotate into a Cypher that they cannot hear, and the other two teammates are gonna take care of your whole team. I want you to try this. I'm not gonna try this. I do not play Cypher out of respect to myself because I used to be a Neon main. I kinda still am a Neon main, and my playstyle used to be just outplaying enemies with reaction time, speed, thinking, you know, if I notice that someone's playing lamps, I just stun and I go B-hop, bam, and I kill him. But that one trip just stops me every time. So I don't play Cypher out of respect to myself. But if you play Cypher, I actually recommend you sometimes putting the camera somewhere where enemies can hear it. Like you can pop it right here, and the enemies are gonna start around on A main, and they're gonna hear the camera. Cypher's playing A, let's rotate. So they all rotate, but your trips are on B. You know what I mean? Let's continue. Now, even though you might be like, Cypher's job is to hold the space that we have, sometimes you are actually the last resort that your teammates have. If they don't buy any utility and you don't really know where you don't have a plan, you actually can start cooking. You can come up to garage, pop your camera, you see everything, you pop the smoke, you take back the camera, you pop the smoke, you spray a little bit this corner, you come up here, you throw the smoke again to pass through this angle, which you don't want to fight. You pop the camera again, you check back sight, and would you look at that? Cypher alone just executed a freaking B split on his own. And what do we do when we have some leftover trips? We place them in really weird angles. You know, you can pop a trip like this, or a trip like this, where they push out and they're like, okay, we're in the clear, and now I'm gonna check back side. Oh shit. And the best thing is this box is very much hold bangable. And now I wanna insert a tip for my Sage mains out there who are like, well, how the hell do I play Sage? It's actually very simple. If you have heal, you heal your teammates. If you have ice bubble and someone has pushed out, you throw ice bubble. You ice bubble. The main utility I want to talk about is the ice wall. Maybe Sage mains call it the Demon Slayer 3000 or something like that. I don't know, I'm not a Sage main. Generally, you want to wall places that are gonna make sure no one's coming from behind you if you're defending, which means that if it's an A or a C execute, you just throw the wall, so you never have to worry about B side, because one guy is not gonna just start breaking, and then you can, you know, calmly start to defend A side. But if we look on attackers, one thing is you should always throw your slow orbs on these default defending spots, because you basically cover the whole site with 2 ice bubbles. But once you do get onto site, I want you to wall off the angle that enemies are less likely to come from. Try to remember all of your post plans and where have the enemies always pushed from. In this situation, they're always going to be pushing from CT. So instead, I want you to wall off heaven to the point where this guy is going to be alone and he's going to take a long time to spam this. He has to reload. Now it's like some weird off angles are appearing and stuff, so it's going to be difficult for him. Same goes for C side. Instead of walling down CT, where most of the enemies are going to try to retake from CT, they're just going to break it. So instead of walling CT, you throw a wall in garage. I don't know what's the best way to wall it, but like, look how scary it would be if there was like one guy and he had to retake from garage, right? It gets weird because the enemies can just peek into him and kill him. I don't know, he's gonna be looking stupid. So always try to lock down the places with your wall that our enemies are least likely to come from. When you do wall off these angles, you can sometimes even boost yourself off to spaces like this. Or spaces like this. The side is still walled off, but now, as enemies are going to be coming out, you're actually going to be seeing them.